Hi everybody. I am coming to you today just to do a little craft and talk about doing some bumblebees that you can add to either your journals now or put them in your stash and add them later, or you can use them on a card you're making maybe for somebody, whatever you decide you want to make them for. So we're going to turn this into this. And I'm going to show you how to do that today. I am using the Sizzix Big Z, and it's a die cut from Lisa Jones. It's number 665193. If you have a die cut machine and you want to get your own, that's what I'm using today. If you do not, I am going to sell some of these in my Etsy shop. Just so you know, I'm mainly doing it so that people that don't have, access to a die cut machine and this die, if they want to just do this crafting, they can go on there and just pick some of these up. Or you could find a stencil somewhere online and you can trace the bumblebee and just cut it out and do something very similar. So it's up to you, whatever you feel like doing. I'm just going to measure this for you so you know how big they are. So from wingspan to wingspan, you've got about 5.5 inches. And then from top to bottom, it is about 2.5 inches. So 5.5 inches by 2.5 inches. So it's quite big. It's not a small bee. And I'll show you an example. I put this one on the cover that I made. So it took up a large space on that. But you can also put these on your pages or use them as tuck spots or I don't know, whatever you feel like doing. That's what I did on that one. All right, and I'm going to show you this process now. So we're going to put this bee aside for now, and we are going to focus on this one. I will take this page away and just do it on the surface. Today I'm going to be using my Neo Color Aquarial, I don't know, Aquarial? I don't know how you say that, but it's water-soluble wax pastel. These come in different sizes. You can get just a basic pack of them, where there's like 10 basic colors, or you can get the extended pack where they have a lot of colors, but I love these. They're really, really cool, and I'll just show you what I do with them. And then I'm using a watercolor brush, and this one you fill it up with water, and then it's just a regular, brush. I do have a jar of water as well, just to rinse off between colors. You might want to have a paper towel handy on the side. I will be using also my Nouveau clear mark pen. This is it's like a what are they called? It's like a clear ink that you can color on. It's just a pen, and you use it for embossing, so it's like an embossing pen. So this one seems to work really well. I've had it for a long time. It hasn't dried out or anything like that. So that's what I'm going to be using today. And then I'm going to be also using, let me get them really quick. I'm going to be using my Tim Holtz Distress Embossing powder, and this one is the Villainous Potion. It's purple. It's like a dark purple. I'm also using my Recollections embossing powder. It's like a sparkly It's called Vintage Lilac. And my Recollections Sparkle Embossing Clear Gold. I believe I got both of these at Michael's. I don't know if they still have them or not, but that's where I got them. I got my Neo colors online, and I got my Distress online. So I buy a lot of the Distress either on Amazon or on scrapbook.com. So that's where you can find those if you are looking for them. And Michael's and Joann's also carries a lot of the Tim Holtz stuff. So sometimes you can find them there. So first of all, we're going to start out by coloring in. You see how this is colored yellow, purple, and purple. So I'm going to first do yellow. And I'm not going to cover the whole thing. I'm just going to do fairly dark marks along the edges here. Because since this is water soluble, when we get it wet, it will spread out. And it works really well. So I'm just putting some marks where I want the yellow. And I'm doing them kind of in the shape that there are little creases that come on these that you can see. They're hard to see, but as guidelines of where to put your marks. Then I'm going to take this one is black, just regular black, and I'm going to go ahead and put marks where I'm going to be coloring the black in. Just going to do a line on each of the feet. And the more black you put on, of course, the darker it will color on, but you don't want to put it on so thick that it's going to make a mess, because it's like a watercolor basically, and it will all bleed into each other if you add too much water. So that's why you want to keep it kind of minimal. Then I'm going to take my, what color is this? It's mauve, but it's like a lilac color. So, and it's the Neo color. And I'm going to color in the wings with that. You don't have to do this color. I'm using this to match my bee journals that I'm doing right now. If you don't want lavender wings, you could always do maybe gold and do the wings yellow and do more gold embossing on it later on. But anyways, on this, I'm going to kind of draw some swirly lines, kind of to make it appear that, like this, that there are lines in the wings, okay? So that's all. I'm not going to color this in with this crayon. I'm just going to make some marks. And you can do it however you feel like doing it. I'm kind of just always freelancing what I feel like doing at the time. I don't have a pattern that I use. Then I'm going to do the same thing to the other wing. Okay, then I'm going to turn it over and I'm going to do the back of the wings as well, so that when in the end they're going to look like this. And on most projects, I'm not embossing these wings back here, because the only reason I'm even putting any color on the back of the wings is so that if I leave the wings sticking up a little bit and you see it from a little bit from the side, all you're going to see is that purple and a little detail maybe. You're not going to just see white cardstock. Also, I am using, I forgot to tell you guys, I cut these out with mixed media paper, and it is 184 pound. So that's what I suggest you use if you're going to be adding water to something, so that it doesn't go through the paper and rip it and make a big mess. And the ones that I will have available on my Etsy shop will also be out of the same paper, so that they will be ready to take these mediums on it. Okay. Okay. And then the other side. You can just play with this. This is kind of one of those parts where you just enjoy the process. All right, I think that's good. Now that we have that part done, we're going to color all this in with some water. So with your water brush, you're just going, I always start with the lightest color first, which I believe is the yellow. And then I'll do the black, and then I'll do the purple wings because they're to the side. But you just squeeze this a little tiny bit, and it will squeeze some water out onto your brush. When you know you've got that brush wet enough, you can kind of see the water coming out a little bit. And then you just kind of lightly paint in the areas that you want the paint to go as you get it wet. And you just spread out that color into that area, like so. And do the other yellow. You do not want to go yellow, then black, then yellow, because if you do that, you're going to have to rinse your brush off between each one. Otherwise, you're going to get black mixed with your yellow, and you don't want that. I mean, if a tiny bit gets mixed in, that's okay. It's not going to matter. But for the most part, you don't want them mixing together because you don't want a muddy look to it. Now, between the black and the yellow, I don't need to really rinse that yellow off because the black's going to be dark enough that it's not going to show anyways in the end. So now I'm going to do the black. Color that in. If you do not have these Neo colors and you cannot afford them, you could probably just, in replacement of doing this process, you could either use watercolors, regular watercolors, which you can usually find fairly cheap, or you can use a marker, any kind of marker, black and yellow, as long as it colors well. Either one would work, or you could use regular paint too. Whatever you have, you can use in this process. I just like this because I have them already on hand, and I keep thinking I need to use them because I don't use them enough. And I personally like the effects, the watercolor effect of them. But you do whatever you have available to you. I wouldn't say you have to go out and buy a bunch of supplies to do this project. You just do what you can do. When I first started crafting, I had nothing, and I just started out with what I had, which, well, I shouldn't say I had nothing, but I had very, very basic supplies, which was almost nothing. I had a few acrylic paints, maybe a little bit of watercolors, basic watercolors. All right, I'm going to rinse my brush out now because I'm going to go and do the lavender wings. And I don't want that black getting in there. So on these wings, I'm going to go very lightly because I don't want to completely wash out those lines. I want them to be show enough in the end result so that I can trace over them with my Nouveau pen, because we're going to need to do that in order to emboss those lines. I got a little bit more water on here than I wanted. But that's okay. It'll still work out. I'll just put some over here. can always dab them too. Like I've got this, you get a little too much on there, and then go back and fix it. But anyways, it's taking me a couple years at least to slowly and gradually build up my supplies, my stash, my supply stash. And there's still things all the time that I think, oh, when I see them, oh, I need to get that. But I have to be careful because I can end up spending way too much money on art supplies. And not only are they can be expensive if you keep buying them all the time, but then you have to store them also. So I would suggest, if you can find an alternative and your budget doesn't really meet up with going out and buying all these different supplies, that you just do what you can with what you have. Sometimes you could even borrow. Maybe you know somebody that's an artist or has an over supply of art stuff that they don't use much. Maybe they would be willing to either part with them for a very small fee or loan them to you. You know, there's always other options than going out and spending a lot of money. Okay. So we got that done. And then I'm going to let that dry before I do the back of the wings. And in the meantime, we're going to set this aside. And I pre-did one to this point so that we can go ahead and emboss. And you can see the embossing process. So I did this one ahead of time. I did the coloring in. And now we're going to just emboss it. I don't need that lid there. The reason I'm putting a piece of paper underneath is because when I go to put the embossing powder on, you want something to catch it so that you can dump it back in when you're done. First, I'm going to go over the yellow. I have to make sure my pen's working, so just push it in like that, make sure the ink's coming out. And then you're just going to go over the areas that you want to emboss, just like you're coloring it in with a pen. Sometimes you'll miss a little spot and it will show when you put your embossing powder on. If I do that, I just get my pen where there's no embossing powder and I just try to color it in. But I do try to make sure that I cover it well so that I don't have to go back and do it again. But no matter how much you try to cover it well, it seems like it's inevitable that you're going to miss a spot every once in a while. Because this is clear and you can't really see where the ink is going. Okay. So first, you just do the yellow, and then you're going to put your marker aside. Make sure you put the lid on so it doesn't dry out. Then we're taking the gold embossing powder, and we're going to just generously dump that on there. Like so. And you're going to take it and just barely tap it to get the excess off, like that. If there's some on the wings and it bothers you, you can always just kind of brush it off. Another tip is you can always take a dry paintbrush to get the excess off, like so. If you're very particular about that and you're like, oh, I don't want that in any area that it's not supposed to be. Personally, I don't really think it matters that much, especially on this project. On some projects it will, but not so much on this one. Okay, so once you do that, then you're going to want to take that piece of paper and you're just going to want to dump that back into your bottle, like so. And put the lid on so you don't accidentally dump it all over your craft room. Okay, now that we've done that, we're going to take a heat gun. This is a heat gun. It's from Recollections. I don't remember where I ordered it, but that's the brand. This one works pretty well. I think you can get these at Michael's as well. I don't know if they have the same brand, but they have heat guns. And you want to turn it on. It's going to make some noise. And then once you turn it on, you want to let it heat up a little bit and make sure it's pretty hot. And it's hot enough to burn, so be careful. Don't put your hand right in front of it and burn yourself. And you want to make sure there's not a lot of stuff around where you're heating, because you don't want to burn or melt something you don't want to accidentally melt. So do this in a safe spot where you know that there's not a lot of flammable stuff around. And then you just turn it on. I suggest pointing it up so that while it heats up, so it's not like pointing toward anything around you. And then just kind of put your hand a little bit in front of it. Make sure it's pretty warm before you start embossing. And then you're going to go across this, and you'll see it changing a little bit in color, just a tiny bit, and it's done at that point. So just do both parts, and that's it. So that one's done. I don't know if how well you guys can see that, but now it's on there really good. It's a little bit, all embossing powder is plastic, little tiny pieces of plastic, so they melt on there and they stay on there once they're heated up. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to take our Nouveau pen again. If you have another embossing pen, then, you know, it doesn't matter what brand you use. I just like this one. I usually research my products a little bit before I buy them, because, especially if I'm buying them online, because I hate buying something, especially online, and then having to send it back because it doesn't work right, or feeling like, oh, well, that was just a loss. That was a waste of money. I believe I researched this and got, looked at a lot of reviews before I bought this particular one to make sure it worked well. And so far, I haven't had any issues with it. It's actually worked really well. I've had it for about 2 years now. I don't use it very often, but I've been using it more lately for little projects like this, where you want to color in some of the details and then emboss. It comes in handy for that. So I'm just doing the same process that I did with the yellow. I'm just going over all the black areas with my Nouveau pen. I'm trying to go around the edges really well too, so that the edges get embossed as well. Okay, I don't think I did this, but maybe I did. I'm just going to go over it again because I don't know. And see, even this has a little tiny thing right there where I didn't emboss it, but that doesn't bother me because it almost looks like an accent there. And it's still yellow underneath, so. Now, if that was a huge space, then I would use my pen and get that covered up, but I think it's fine. Okay. Then after you color that all in real well, you're going to use the Villainous Potion embossing. These are embossing glaze, not powder, from Tim Holtz Distress line. So the embossing glazes are actually see-through, so you're going to be able to see the substrate underneath. So even though this is a dark purple, when it's all said and done, it looks more black. I mean, when you see it up close, then you can tell it's dark purple, but because of the black on there, it's going to look more black because it's underneath it, and it's You can see through it. Okay. So again, you want to be very generous with your embossing powder. Go over the entire surface with it. Gently get off the excess. Now in this case where there's quite a bit of stuff sticking on there, I'm going to use my brush and get some of that off of there because that's a little too much. I don't want, because once you heat that up, you can't get it off. So if you want it, if you don't want it in certain spots, then you want to get it off now. Okay. Now, well, okay. So we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to get this all in the center here and dump it back in to our bottle. Being kind of stubborn, sticking. Okay, good enough. And then put your lid on. You don't want it. Oh, when I did that, some stuff from the lid came all over this. So I'm going to put that in there too. Some people like to do this outside because it's a little messy. Obviously for this purpose, I can't do this outside, and I usually don't. I usually do it on my floor though. I don't usually do it at my desk. But do wherever you want. You feel like you can. Okay, so now we're going to emboss that one. Okay. So this one, when you start seeing it kind of turn a little glossy looking, then it's been heated enough. And you just slowly go over to the other areas. You don't want to overheat it because it will start bubbling on you if it's overheated. I think it kind of bubbles a little bit anyways. It's just the look of it. But if you like sit there and hold it on way too long, it's going to bubble a lot more. And instead of looking glossy, it's not going to look as nice. But see how that it's kind of just shiny now and it looks nice. I like it. Okay, so now we're going to do the wings. Just making sure there's not a lot of little tiny particles on there. I'm going to take this away for a minute because I don't want that under my wings. Okay, and then we're going to take our Nouveau pen again and we're just going to trace over those little lines that we made earlier. Uh-oh, it got a little bit of black on it, so I'm going to kind of scribble that black off of there. Although I don't think it's going to show anyways once the embossing powder's on, but I'd rather just not have it on there. So you're just going to follow those lines and emboss, use the embossing marker on each line. You don't want to color in the entire wing. And then I like to go on the outside, very edge of the wing as well with my embossing pen. Again, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. It's up to you and your artistic what you like artistically. Okay, and then this side. Again, around the edges. Okay, just like that. And then I'm going to bring our piece of paper over here again. And we're going to use the purple. The name of it's Vintage Lilac though. So, and then you just go over the wings really well. Okay. And see the lines in there now? Where you went and traced everything. A little bit of that got on the head, so I'll go ahead and get that off before I heat it up. Then I'm going to dump this back in. Okay, it's like you almost need another piece of paper under there to get the little bit that goes all over. Alright, put your lid on and heat it up. Get your gun out. And you just go over your wings. I don't know if you guys can see how it changes a little bit as you go over with the heat. Just a tiny bit. It's like just a really light change, so gotta pay attention. Okay, and that is it. And your bumblebee is all done. And what you can do is like you can put it on pages or on card fronts or whatever you decide, maybe a big flower and a bee in the middle. Whatever you want to do. But that is my process. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope that you have fun making your own bees. I will put a link below to my Etsy shop, so if you want to go ahead and get yourself a few of these dies. I'm going to be putting them up there, and they will be with mixed media paper. So, all right, you guys have a good day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.